All right, so welcome back, guys. What I'd like to do this morning is start off with just any questions that you have from yesterday. So far, we've covered, integration, we've covered scope and schedule. Any questions from yesterday? We did talk about planning and creating the cost baseline.
Mhm.
Can I address anything at this time before we jump in?
No, I think we're good. Let's keep going.
Okay. Okay, great. So before we go into control cost, and most of this section is about earned value, and you're probably going to see about, I don't know, my intelligence tells me roughly around, you might see 8 or 9 questions. I can't exactly say what they are, of course, but um, you're going to get questions on controlling costs. So first, let's just do a quick review of where we are. If you remember from yesterday, we finished the cost baseline, which allowed us to equate the schedule to the cost. We assigned labor rates. We rolled up the cost to create a budget at completion. And we showed that black line showed how we're going to burn the dollars over the life of the project, which we call a cost baseline.
Right.
Okay, so what are the inputs? Now your project is running. You're looking at how the project is progressing. So clearly you're going to look at your cost management plan because that tells you um, how to manage costs. You are going to look at the cost baseline because that shows how you're burning the dollars over the life of the project. But you're also going to be looking at the performance measurement baseline. Now, this performance measurement baseline is simply the conglomeration of scope, schedule, and costs. All right, you're going to look at lessons learned register, of course, funding requirements. Now, here we have something interesting. Remember, we've been talking about this all week. What is work performance data? What is this? And why do you need it here? And what comes out of it? Do you remember?
Yeah, this is the raw
Raw.
costs, things that have not yet been processed.
And good. And what you need to do is put it into context using some of the techniques we're about to show you. Put it into context to mean something. So what is raw data? Raw data could be, for example, you got an invoice. You got an invoice from a customer or from a vendor, and that invoice was 5,000 more than you were anticipating. Well, that's raw data. I don't know whether you're over budget, under budget, until you put it into context to mean something. Frankly, it means nothing. So we've got to use some of the techniques that we're about to go over. We've got to use some techniques to talk about that. So we're going to talk about some earned value analysis, some variance and trend analysis. I like the two complete performance index. Of course, you need to surround yourself with experts who are going to help you understand these impacts. So, what I like to do when I teach earned value, and I've taught a lot of this, I teach it in presentations, I teach it in PMP prep. I even have a full, 1 day course on earned value. And I feel that it demonstrates best with a case study. So let's do a case study, but we need to define our terms. And I like to tell all of my students that if you can get to these 4 metrics, you can most likely answer anything they throw at you. All right. So let's define these terms. Plan value is the amount of dollars you had planned to spend, and you'll get that number off your schedule, off your costed schedule. And actual cost is the amount of actual dollars you have spent up till that point in time. Now, earned value, but let me ask you guys, what's missing? What's missing from that metric? What's missing from if I tell you I plan to spend a certain amount of money and I actually spent a certain amount of money, what's missing from that? Anything in your mind? You're shaking your head, Greg.
Delta.
The delta, in other words, what's the difference between those two? Okay, that will tell you whether you're over or under, but what's even missing from that? What do you think?
Well,
Well,
I don't want to give it away, but on the slide it says budget at completion.
yeah.
So
Well,
I think that's a formula, and so you want to compare what your projection to be at the completion.
okay, that's the sum of the total budget of the completion. But where I was getting to was we can look at how much we plan to spend, we can look at how much we actually spent, but until we introduce this metric, the value, until we come up with the value of the project's product at this point in time, those first, the plan and actual mean very little. Somebody has to bring in the value of the product as it's being completed. And once we have those three metrics and can compare it against our budget at completion, which is the total bogey that we're trying to reach, it really means very little. So let's go into our case study. And here we have a sample project. So your company just won a DoD contract to build 2 Army tanks. And the way you planned this thing, it's $2 million. Now I know the numbers aren't real, but they work out and they're round. So you've worked agreement with the government, DoD, and you're going to build 2 tanks. And you're going to burn the dollars slowly over the life of the project. So in other words, you're going to build 1 tank, turn it over to the government, then build the second tank and turn it over to the government. And and you've agreed to do it that way, and the general and the customer has okayed it, and you win this work. So you end up with a nice little cost baseline that looks like this. So let's continue the story. This gets baseline, and now you're going to start to manage the project, and now you've got some actual costs. So talk to me. What are you seeing here? How would you interpret this screen? Any thoughts?
Yeah. So instead of costing $1 million, you kind of went over cost at actually at 1.2. Your
Yeah.
projection was off a little bit,
Yes.
or
Yeah. Good. What I tell folks, so let's put this into English. I had planned to spend $1 million, and I actually spent 1.2 million. Okay. So how are you feeling about this right now?
well, you're a little bit worried because
Okay.
you don't know how the government will react, or
Okay.
and
this is work performance data to me. You don't even know why this is happening.
Yeah, you don't know
yeah.
why this is okay, good. So it feels work performance. It feels like feels like I'm over budget. And on paper I am over budget. Well, let's go back to what I said earlier. What's missing from this analysis? What's missing here?
What have you actually produced for that
Good.
$1.2 million?
Exactly. What have you produced? What is the value of the tank? Well, it's clear that I had planned to spend $1 million and deliver 1 tank, right? Up till today. But I've spent 1.2 million. Okay, let me add to this example here, and now let's continue our discussion. So, what do I got here? Now I'm telling you that the value of the tank is 80% complete, right? So I'm saying that now I tell folks, let's put it into English. I had planned to spend $1 million. I actually spent 1.2 million, and I have developed and delivering 80% of that first tank. So you feeling better or worse from the previous screen?
Worse.
Yeah. I'm not feeling too good about this because first of all, I'm overspending against the plan and I'm under delivering as it relates to the product. And but let me ask you guys a question. if you're the general and I'm presenting this to you, what are you going to ask me? What would you ask me? We've gone out into the construction yard. We've seen the tank. What is he going to say to you? What are your thoughts?
What happened?
What happened? Hey, Joe, look, you're under delivering here. Why are you under delivering? So the first question you're going to get is why? Why is this happening? Right? What else are you going to get, you think? What else is he or she going to tell you? How about up there? The question, if I were the general, the question I'd be asking you is, hey Joe, are you here asking for more money? I gave you 2 million to do 2 tanks, and it looks like you've spent 1.2 to deliver 80% of that first tank. Are you here asking for money? So he's going to want to know, are you going to recalculate this BAC? Are you getting ready to hand me a change request, for
Right.
something amount of money, right? So he's going to ask all these questions, and you're going to be prepared. You're going to need to prepare. Prepare to answer that. But what about this 80%, right? If I'm the general, I'm going to say to you, hey, Bill, wait a minute. I think it's 0% complete, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not 80. In my mind, it's 0. And then you're going to have an arm wrestle to him about how do you measure completion. And that's going to be our next discussion, is how do we measure completion on a product, because this can be a matter of opinion, and that's where it gets a little bit risky. So our next topic of discussion really needs to be about how do we measure completion.